Let's see if I can see if I can put this into a tighter focus. BL games, that would be the NFL, the NBA, Olympics, all your corporate sports, emperors, amusement parks, including Disneyland, coupled with Lady Chatterley, the story of Lady Chatterley. Love her. My previous video, and what were my experiences as a child because of what I observed, what I learned through that in my mirror, or if you will, the result of that. Now I'm experiencing the result of what happens with that when I observe. In other words, you're observing the observed, but you can experience the future result of what you're observing that you sort of already know is going to result in the future what you thus experience. That's the future proves past, back to the future, something that you already know that you saw in the future. And it happens. Because it's the nature of the way that works between perceived money and power or resources, right? Because on the one hand, if you thought of a Draco reptilian queen, would you not want her to have everything that makes her happy and joyful and pleasant? Okay, so when I think of diamonds, right? Would you rather have a diamond, a fake diamond? Would you rather have a real diamond? I have a real diamond heart. Now I can change colors on it, but I normally, in this mode, through this life, wear a pink rose. I have a pink rose, which is a pink diamond, which is my heart. It's a crystal pink heart. Okay, so I'm all pink. Absolutely. I'm as pink as it gets. I love baby blue. Okay, there is a natural mother in me. Okay, I know how to nurture a newborn, same way that a goddess does. Okay, which means there's a God in me just the way that there is a goddess in me. A father in me, and living spirit of aloha with a goddess, which means I'm one. The same love that she's giving to our children, I'm giving to our children. We're one. That's how it works. And the beauty of that, I suppose, is because it's so natural. The spirit in the wave form, naturally in the light, has so much love with another spirit, which is her essence. I'll just share you how passionate I feel about this. Like when I was a little boy growing up, okay? I met a 6-year-old little girl when I was a 6-year-old little boy who completely captured me. I wanted to be with her forever. The essence of her spirit and her energy on how beautiful she was in spirit to be with her energy, but the essence of her spirit through her eyes and the power of her soul through her eyes. What you experience through the eyes, the soul knows, the spirit knows. Wow, let's go create a universe together. Imagining you're experiencing that at 6 years old with another little girl, and she's wanting to do that with you. That's the purity and the innocence between a little boy and a little girl who feel that way in spirit, which is the essence. Oh, they love that essence in children. They realize that is the true source of power because of how pure it is. There's a lot of fire in that engine. They both have to combine their engines in fire to go create a universe together. Yep. That's what they go after. That's their biggest prize. And the pain in that is that they aren't that, and you would love for them to become that, to experience being one like that, because of the eternal blessing that we experience being what that is, to experience that. across all time and space, because there is no time. There's just energy. The spirit that is in that energy is on fire to be with another spirit that's on fire, and you want to go create a universe together as children? Yeah. As my father would say, what did you learn out of this? Come with us. We'll show you what love is. Do you remember them? Do you remember those children? I was with those children. I was with those children. They were called flower children. They were real flower children. Earthy types. Flower lay on their hair, flowers. Children. Put your weapons down. You have nothing to be in fear of. We will show you what love is. Children showing armed soldiers. They were in absolutely no fear of their weapons. Putting flower stems in their barrels. Come with us. We're flowers. We're flower children. We are what love is. Come with us so that you can experience having no fear of us, because we are what love is. We're not going to do you any harm. That was a wake-up call to let them know we were here, because my energy was in all that. Yeah. I was one of those flower child, and the energy that I am, which are in those flowers, are in those flowers that are in those children. That's why trying to sort out the 1960s is a big story. They don't tell the full story, the real story, which is everything that is going on behind the scenes. To engineer the future. That's right. So you got to cut through their lines of communication, tap into their lines. We read their mail before they get it. Do you know that? We have certain capabilities that they haven't thought of yet. Okay. That's right. That's exactly right. And you'd have to know that to be on the right side. And that's what I always knew when it came down into these last 15 years, particularly with people that are in the militaries around the world, particularly with the intelligence agencies, your directors of intelligence. Like, what's his name? I can't remember. The admiral that Trump met with? Rogers. Yeah. So I very much know, because of my how old I am, actually, of how would we put this? Guidance. You know, I'm a guide. So in other words, I don't impose my will on anybody. I am what love is. I hang out with a goddess. I'm one. That sort of changes everything, but it not really. It just means I am what love is. I just keep that simple. But when I talk about these kinds of things, to share them in truth, because of the military aspect of side, I've had to go back and forth with all this, okay? Just, if nothing else, what I experienced in the military academy, to know how a military mind is trained, okay? So this is why, and I'll just share this with you because it's true. The girl that I hooked up with her to try and heal her. I gave her a safe place for 23 years to save her from a demon. That's really what it boiled down to. He tried to kill me. Okay, that's a whole another story. When you talk about spiritual warfare stories, we always have lots of stories of what we learned engaged in battle, which is energy battle, which is spiritual battle. Okay, and how these are fought. Energy wars are fought between spirits with souls and those without them, and those that are using technology because of the perception of power that they have, which is control, which means they're not free because we are, thus they can't control us because we're free, because love is what frees us. That in them is what holds them captive, so they're not free. That's why they have to put everything on a leash and collar, which means they're not free of that. So they're having to hold all this stuff in memory in order to hold what they hold in memory, that they're controlling what they remembered that's on record. See? So they keep consuming more of what we are in order for them to be more of what they are, which isn't what we are, which is what love is. And that's how it works. It's quite simple. So the battle line is drawn. That's right. That's why I always said there is a line in that sand. And there's one that you do not cross. And you know when that is. Right. I don't step in that. Right. Nope. So you realize the pull of their magnet, if you will, to that side. And it can be very deceptive, and it's a very powerful force. Absolutely. Drawing it right down into those typhoon tunnels that are dark. That's right. You got to burn your way out of there. They're in a hole. So you got to burn your way out of there. It's like you got a drill motor with a big ass. It's like a ball on fire, just burning out everything. 300. In other words, it's a ball that's going through a tunnel driver, a pipeline, a big ass pipeline. You know, your heart, your vortex, and it's the most powerful experiences that we have, that we share with others. How these kinds of wars are fought. You know, I simply share what I've experienced as a result of what I've been and what I know that I am and knowing what I'm not. So I realized that sometime around, I suppose it was in the early 2000, certainly 2000, 1, you know, when those buildings went down, that was a major marker. Okay, when that occurred. Even though it's always in the perspective of my childhood, which means I've never lost a center point from which I come, which goes on forever, gifting love. So I am what love is. That's never changed. So that means you've never gotten off that center point. A balance, right? You are what love is. It goes on forever. You're the one. Law of spheres. So you're giving love to all creation. It just comes natural. Doesn't have to think about it. That's the beauty of it. So when you are what that is, and you're measuring everything that isn't, then you're measuring essentially the timelines that are being engineered by the units of consciousness that are using your energy to experience what they are in sequences or multidimensionally. So now you're beginning to map changes and the rate of change, right, which is a harmonic ratio, which is mathematical in nature, by the units that are here communicating with each other, what we're communicating, by what we're experiencing in our mirror. The changes that are taking place in the direction that we're all going together, and how these different units of energy that are all coming together as formations of consciousness, what they become to realize if they're waking up to realize they're coming out of this because they realize, wow, what side you're on that's winning. So I use different words to sort of describe it. If you understand what a snake is, it's going to eat up its own energy to consume itself, because it realizes it no longer has a source of energy from which it can keep feeding on anymore. So I used to say a long time ago, quit feeding the vampire. Okay, which is cut off the feeder lines. So when more light is being experienced, you're cutting off their lines of communication they have with us to do that, which is like a harness. I simply call it a feeder line, right? Or you can say it as like a fisherman that's trying to go after the fish. Right? So you can translate that across the whole spectrum in a behavioral way, right? Giving and taking. How much love we have to give everything that's alive and living in creation. If it's natural for you to go out and plant a seed and you're giving it love, then you know why you're giving it love, because you know that's the energy that's going to make it grow and be healthy. So the same would be true for anything that's alive and living in nature, whether it's your child or something else, a dog, a cat, anything that's in nature. You realize you're the energy that's making it all grow because you love everything that's out there, even though you're not having a relationship with it, which means you know there could be a bear 1,000 miles away, but the same love that you are is the same love that it's experiencing through you. And when it's flowing through all of the planet, then everything that is here is experiencing what that is, the same as what you are, which is what I am. So the punchline here that was why I'm doing this was you're measuring scales and realizing that particularly people that are in the intelligence agencies and in what I call the what we know as the conventional military, okay, which would be, for me, excuse me, those that work in this area, that wear uniforms. It reminds me when I was a child with little sets. I had a set that was based on Fort Apache with the actual, they were plastic. Some was steel. Because I did have a set, an old set that was called Burnt Steel. It was actually an expensive set that my mother got, which was like a battlefield during the days of Napoleon. With a little, these were like silver and painted, really little tiny. They were silver. So you had all the little men that you could line up like on a battlefield as if you're going to replay or simulate that way using miniatures. See? So I was raised on a lot of all this kind of stuff for obvious reasons why I came in when I came in, because it all has to do with tactics and strategy. But the intelligence is the real driver of everything that happens on any battlefield. And that has to do with communication. You cut off the command and control of anything that represents all your troops, they're blind. Now they're running blind. And when they're running blind, when they don't have any communications, that's why they set up everything they did in communications, which was to drown out ours. Okay, because that's communication. See, without just as an example, in 1970, when I was working for the U.S. Forest Service, not a coincidence why I learned these things, because it all applies. Everything applies. Remember, API, Application Programming Interface. You're mapping the interface between you and it, because you know that it's not what we are, which is what love is. They feed on our energy. That's obvious. Okay? Without us, they don't exist. They know that. That's why they feed on us. So they know where the real source of power is, but they refuse to surrender to it. So that means they automatically lose because their energy will always be finite. So when they sort of begin to realize, you know what? I got my logic back. Even the intelligence side of who I am can figure that much out. I would think they'd want to be on the winning side and not the losing side when they begin to realize what's here. This is an energy equation. Or this is the real stuff. Yeah, this is about physics, spirit, mathematics, real spiritual science. Now, they weren't teaching that in their schools, were they? They banned it. So you ended up with all the rest of the junk, and I know that because I went to all those schools. Right? Now, it's not like energy for energy value as numbers in language. What you're learning in language, it gets programmed into RAM. It's just that becomes a future-proof past upon which the application programming interface is made manifest in the reality that we experience in the future thereof. So that's what they do. So when you're a polarity integrator and you're the one, okay, you're burning off an enormous amount of bullshit, which is programming, because that's what they do. Start out with a blank slate. Everything's on the disk, okay? Plug that VC, plug that little CD into the back of that head. You know, with the barcode, run the information. Hey, now we got a machine running around. Just program it. All right, now we got a machine doing work for us. Doesn't even know it. And so now you begin to realize on a spiritual level, on a spiritual ground, when it comes to technology and advanced technology, what's at risk, what's at stake. Because you realize that the further acceleration of the further development of technology, when it's used as a weapon, puts everybody at risk. Because if it accelerates faster than your ability to accelerate something else in technology to combat what it is, now we're in technology wars. And so technology wars become energy wars, which are consciousness wars, or if you will, souls, and spirit, which is a spiritual war, because spirit is in the energy. So now you're back to energy wars, which is control over energy, which is consciousness, which is soul. Now we're back to spirit. That's the invisible landscape, right? So when you see something on the physical level, like a guy wearing a military uniform, that's a costume. Okay? Because what would be the difference between that uniform now with a guy that's wearing camos for the United States Marine Corps and somebody who was wearing red and blue with Napoleon? The only difference between the two is the weapons that they have and the costumes that they wear, and the method by which they're going to war against each other. One's using a rifle and cannonballs, the other one's using a directed energy weapon. Same diff. Trauma is the result. So that's not what love is. So that's not what the law is. Right? So when you realize sort of how this plays out in using what I call diorama sets,